Jessica Harlow could no longer breathe in Manhattan. Her job as editor-in-chief at a fashion magazine had consumed her last 5 years with impossible deadlines, incessant emails, and sleepless nights. Her migraines had become so frequent that she kept a stock of painkillers in each purse. When she found the online advertisement for a detox retreat in traditional rural America for just $250 for an entire week, it seemed too good to be true. Come experience the simple life as our ancestors lived. No phones, no internet, no modern stress. Learn ancient traditions, harvest your own food, and reconnect with what truly matters. When she shared the idea in the burnout support group she attended on Tuesdays, 5 others quickly became interested. Michael Thompson, a cardiac surgeon who had lost a patient on the operating table 3 weeks earlier and couldn't overcome the guilt. Amber Reeves, a young digital influencer who secretly despised the life she displayed online. Connor Blackwood, a recently divorced stockbroker whose apartment now seemed too big and too empty. Emily Chen, a corporate lawyer who hadn't been able to sleep more than 3 hours a night for months. And finally, Daniel Parker, a university professor on leave for nervous exhaustion after 20 years teaching American literature. They all agreed that the price seemed suspiciously low for a full week of accommodation and food. But the New Harmony community explained on their rustic website that we grow our own food and live simply, allowing us to offer this experience at prices that the modern world wouldn't understand. It seemed to make sense, especially considering that the community was located in the middle of rural Tennessee, far from everything. What none of them noticed as they packed their bags was the small note at the end of the contract they digitally signed, written in a font so small it would require a magnifying glass to read. One among you will be chosen to remain permanently in New Harmony, according to our ancestral traditions. After a long car trip departing from Nashville, the group finally arrived at the New Harmony community at dusk. The dirt road wound through dense woods before revealing a sheltered valley where about 30 wooden houses and a larger structure that looked like a communal barn were clustered around a central square. There were no visible electrical wires, no antennas, nor any sign of modern technology. An elderly woman with gray hair tied in a severe bun and wearing a simple long dress introduced herself as Martha. Her wrinkled face displayed a serene expression, but her eyes, Jessica noticed, seemed to study them with a disturbing intensity. Welcome to New Harmony. We are honored that you've chosen to share in our way of life, even if for a short time, Martha said with a melodious voice that seemed older than her body. Please, hand over your electronic devices. They won't work here anyway, and true healing only begins when we cut ties with the modern world. Though reluctant, everyone handed over their cell phones, which Martha placed in an ornate wooden box engraved with strange symbols. Connor asked about the symbols, and Martha simply smiled. They are very ancient, from a time when people better understood balance. The accommodations were rustic, individual cabins with simple but comfortable beds, kerosene lighting, and a basin for personal hygiene. The sanitary facilities were shared and operated with a composting system that Martha explained was the way our ancestors honored the earth. Dinner was served in the communal barn, a large wooden table where everyone sat, including about 20 local residents. The food was simple but surprisingly tasty: fresh vegetable stew, homemade bread still warm, and fermented apple cider. Michael observed that he didn't see meat on the table and questioned this to a middle-aged man named Joseph, who had led the prayer before the meal. We eat meat only on special occasions, Joseph explained with an enigmatic smile. In fact, we'll have a celebration at the end of the week. It's a very ancient tradition here in New Harmony. During dinner, Daniel, the professor, tried to make conversation about the community's history, asking when it had been founded. New Harmony has existed since before time was counted as it is today, replied an elderly lady named Ruth, who seemed even older than Martha. Our ancestors came to these lands fleeing those who didn't understand our ways. We've kept our traditions intact since then. Emily, always analytical, found the answer too vague. But what does that mean? The 1800s? 1700s? Time is measured differently when you live in harmony with natural cycles, Ruth replied, still smiling placidly. But if you need numbers, let's say our traditions date back to the old continent, long before this land was called America. That first night, as each retreated to their cabin, Amber commented to Jessica that she found everything perfectly Instagrammable, lamenting not being able to share it online. Jessica agreed, but couldn't help feeling a subtle discomfort. Something in the gazes of the local residents seemed expectant. The second day began before dawn, with the sound of a bronze bell that echoed throughout the valley. The visitors, still sleepy, were led to a crystalline stream for what Martha called morning purification. The water was freezing, and Connor protested, but Joseph calmly explained that momentary discomfort cleanses not only the body, but also the mind of modern poisons. Days in New Harmony followed a rigorous pattern. Wake at sunrise, bathe in the stream, communal breakfast, then work in the fields or craft workshops. Simple lunch followed by more work or study of the traditions, dinner at sunset, and then stories around the central bonfire before everyone retired when the moon reached a certain point in the sky. On the third day, while helping with vegetable harvesting, Michael cut his hand on a tool. The cut wasn't deep, but it bled considerably. Martha appeared almost instantly with a small leather pouch. "Let me take care of that," she said, applying a dark green ointment that smelled of earth and unknown herbs. Then, she bound the wound with a white cloth while whispering words in a language that no one recognized. Surprisingly, the pain disappeared almost immediately. "What language is that?" asked Michael, impressed with the effectiveness of the treatment. "It's the language of the first ones who came here," Martha replied. "Words have power when pronounced correctly." That same afternoon, Emily noticed something disturbing. While organizing dried herbs in the communal barn as instructed by Ruth, she found a room in the back with the door ajar. Inside, she saw what appeared to be a stone altar with deep grooves that ran to a basin at the base. Something about that configuration left her deeply uncomfortable, but before she could examine it more closely, Ruth appeared silently behind her. "That room isn't ready for visitors," Ruth said firmly, though maintaining her placid smile. "It's a sacred place used only on special occasions." That night during dinner, Emily tried to comment about the room to the others, but was constantly interrupted by local residents offering more food or initiating conversations about other matters. Eventually, she managed to whisper to Jessica about what she saw, but Jessica was so absorbed in the sense of freedom she was experiencing away from her phone and emails that she minimized the concern. "It's probably just some kind of chapel or meditation place," Jessica replied. "These people are a bit eccentric, but they don't seem dangerous." The fourth day brought the first death. Amber didn't show up for the morning bath in the stream. When they went to check her cabin, they found it empty, the bed made as if it had never been used. Joseph gathered everyone in the center of the village. Unfortunately, sometimes visitors discover they aren't ready for the simplicity of our life. Amber decided to leave during the night. "It's a shame, but we respect her choice." Connor questioned how she could have left without her phone or without asking for a ride, since they had come in only 2 cars. "She insisted on walking to the main road to catch a bus," Martha explained calmly. "We returned her belongings and showed her the way. Some aren't prepared to disconnect completely." No one entirely believed the explanation, but no one had evidence to contest it. Daniel suggested that perhaps they should verify if Amber had really arrived safely in Nashville, but was reminded that they had no access to phones. "We can check when our weekends," said Jessica, trying to calm things down. Amber was always impulsive anyway. As the days passed, the remaining visitors began to experience a strange duality. On one hand, there was an undeniable sense of peace in living according to natural rhythms. Without the constant interruptions of technology, without artificial deadlines, without the pressure to always be available and productive. Connor, who was initially the most reluctant to abandon his phone, admitted during a particularly spectacular sunset that, Perhaps we've lost something important by moving away from this type of life. He had spent the day learning to make simple furniture with Joseph, using only hand tools, and the tangible satisfaction of creating something with his own hands had deeply touched him. Emily, always analytical, observed the functioning of the community with growing fascination. "They've managed to create an almost completely self-sufficient economic system," she commented, while helping in the communal kitchen. "They produce practically everything they need and exchange the surplus with neighboring communities. It's a model that completely defies modern capitalism." Jessica discovered that her migraines had completely disappeared, and her sleep, for the first time in years, was deep and restorative. "My body is remembering how to function naturally," she commented one morning. Michael, the surgeon, spent hours with the local healers, fascinated by the plant-based remedies they used. "There's genuine knowledge here," he said to Daniel. "Things that modern medicine is now rediscovering they never forgot." However, on the other hand, small concerns continued to accumulate. On the morning of the 5th day, Connor noticed that his wristwatch had stopped exactly at midnight, although the battery was new. When he mentioned this to Joseph, he received only an enigmatic comment. Time flows differently in New Harmony. Daniel, the literature professor, began to recognize elements in the stories told around the bonfire at night. "These are ancient versions of European pagan tales," he whispered to Jessica. "Many of them have themes of sacrifice to ensure abundant harvests or protection against supernatural forces." And then, on the morning of the 6th day, Michael didn't appear for the ritual bath in the stream. His cabin was empty, just as Amber's had been. This time, Martha explained that he had felt homesick for his work at the hospital and decided to return early. "He mentioned that he might implement some of our healing methods in his practice," she added with a serene smile. "It's gratifying to see our traditions being valued." Jessica, Connor, Emily, and Daniel exchanged concerned glances. None of them believed this explanation, but they also had no way to verify the truth. "2 in 2 days," Emily whispered to the others when they managed a moment alone. "This can't be coincidence." "Maybe we should leave too," suggested Connor, his initial enthusiasm for the simple life now tempered by growing anxiety. "How?" replied Daniel. "Our cars have disappeared from where we parked them. And do you remember how the trip here was? We're at least 20 kilometers from the main road, in the middle of forests that none of us know. Besides," added Jessica, "we still don't have our phones back. And there's that celebration they mentioned that will happen tomorrow night, on our last day here." "The celebration," murmured Emily. "Remember that Joseph said they eat meat only on special occasions? And that room in the back of the barn with the altar?" The silence that followed was charged with a fear that none of them was prepared to fully articulate. The 6th day passed in a climate of poorly disguised tension. The 4 remaining visitors tried to maintain appearances, participating in daily activities while discreetly planning how to leave the community. They decided they would try to recover their phones during the night and flee before dawn. However, by evening, Emily had disappeared. She had gone to collect medicinal herbs with Ruth and simply didn't return. When questioned, Ruth and the other residents seemed genuinely confused. "She mentioned wanting to explore the stream to its source in the mountain," said Ruth. "I advised her not to go alone, but she insisted she needed a moment of solitude to process everything she had learned here." Connor, already at the limit of his self-control, exploded. "This is ridiculous. You're doing something with our friends. Where are Amber, Michael, and now Emily?" Joseph placed a hand on his shoulder with surprising strength for someone his age. "Connor, I understand your concern, but you need to trust the process. New Harmony has existed for centuries because we maintain a delicate balance between the old and the new. Your friends have found their own paths, just as you will find yours." That night, Jessica, Connor, and Daniel secretly met in Jessica's cabin. "We have to leave now," insisted Daniel. 3 have already disappeared. One of us will be next." "No," corrected Jessica, her voice trembling slightly. "One of us 3 will be the last. The sacrifice." "Sacrifice?" Connor almost shouted before lowering his voice. You really think they're killing our friends? Think about it, Jessica explained. All the stories around the bonfire, the comments about balance, the altar that Emily saw. This community seems idyllic because they probably have been doing this for generations, bringing people from the city, eliminating them one by one, and sacrificing the last one to ensure their continued prosperity. It's like in the ancient European agrarian cults, agreed Daniel. Human sacrifice was seen as necessary to ensure abundant harvests and protection against disasters. But we're in the 21st century, protested Connor. This is madness. Look around, said Jessica. This community exists in a kind of time bubble. They've preserved traditions that the outside world abandoned centuries ago. They decided to act immediately. They waited until the village seemed asleep, and then sneaked to the communal barn, where they suspected their belongings were stored. The moon was almost full, providing enough light to move without flashlights. The barn was silent and apparently empty. They found the ornate box where they had seen Martha store their phones, but upon opening it, they discovered it was empty. Look elsewhere, whispered Daniel. There must be some kind of office or storage room. As they searched the space, Connor found a door that led to a cellar beneath the barn. The three cautiously descended the worn wooden steps, only to find a horrific spectacle that confirmed their worst fears. In the center of the cellar was a circle of stones, and within it, 3 smaller altars. On each of them rested a sealed clay container, and inscribed on the stones around them, they could clearly see the names: Amber, Michael, Emily. Jessica covered her mouth to stifle a scream. Daniel turned pale, but maintained enough composure to examine the rest of the environment. On the walls, there were ancient drawings showing human figures being offered to an entity that seemed to emerge from the earth itself. Each container probably contains some part of them that they consider essential for the ritual, whispered Daniel. The blood, perhaps, or... I don't want to know, interrupted Connor. We have to get out of here now. But as they turned toward the stairs, they found Martha, Joseph, and several other residents blocking the way, holding lanterns that cast distorted shadows on the cellar walls. You shouldn't be here yet, said Martha, her voice now devoid of its usual serenity. The full revelation should only occur tomorrow, when only one remained. The dawn of the 7th day found only Jessica alive. After being discovered in the cellar, the 3 were separated and taken to different cabins. During the night, Jessica heard distant screams. First Connor's, then Daniel's. Each scream was followed by a terrible silence and the sound of chanting in an unknown language. Martha came to fetch her at sunrise. The old woman was dressed differently, with a dark red robe decorated with symbols similar to those on the box where they had stored the phones. You are the chosen one, Jessica, Martha said softly. You must be wondering why you're alive while the others are not. Jessica, paralyzed by terror and despair, couldn't respond. New Harmony has existed for almost 400 years on this continent, continued Martha as she guided Jessica out of the cabin. And for millennia before that in the old world. We maintain the balance between the old and the new, between tradition and progress, but such balance has a price. The entire community was gathered in the central square. In the middle of it, there was now a much larger stone altar than those in the cellar, the same type of altar that Emily had glimpsed earlier. Joseph stood beside it, wearing a robe similar to Martha's, holding what appeared to be an ancient flint knife. Each year, we receive those who are weary of the modern world, explained Martha. Those who somehow feel that something essential has been lost in humanity's frantic progress. And they are right. Something has been lost. The connection with the rhythms of the earth, with the cycles of life and death. Why me? Jessica finally managed to ask, her voice almost inaudible. We don't choose, replied Joseph, approaching. The earth chooses. We observe carefully, and the earth shows us who has absorbed our lessons most deeply, who has most sincerely felt the reconnection with the ancient way. You, Jessica, slept without nightmares for the first time in years. Your headaches disappeared. You flourished here in a way that the others couldn't. The final sacrifice isn't cruel, Jessica, continued Martha. It's an honor. You won't simply be killed like the others, who served only as preliminary offerings. You will become part of New Harmony forever. Your spirit will nourish our harvests, protect our way of life for another year, until another chosen person takes your place. Jessica looked around, seeking some escape route, but she was completely surrounded. The entire community, men, women, and even children, formed a perfect circle around the altar. All wore the same serene look that had initially confused Jessica with inner peace, but which she now recognized as something much older and more relentless. "You can't do this," she protested, the tears finally coming. "It's murder. It's madness." "It's tradition," corrected Joseph. "And much older than any man-made law. Generations pass, empires fall, technologies change, but the earth remains, and the earth demands balance." Martha took Jessica's hand and, to her own horror, Jessica felt a strange calm beginning to spread through her body from the point of contact, as if some kind of drug was being absorbed through her skin. What are you giving me?" she asked,
"Just
feeling her
herbs to
legs
calm
grow
your
heavy.
mind,"
explained Martha. "The same we gave to your friends before them. The transition must be peaceful for the offering to be accepted." As they guided her to the altar, Jessica's legs moving almost involuntarily, she had one last moment of clarity. The rustic website, the price too low, the isolated location, everything had been carefully planned to attract exactly the kind of people that New Harmony needed. Stressed, disconnected individuals desperate for something simpler and more meaningful. The last thing Jessica saw before being laid on the altar was the sky above, of such a perfect blue that it seemed unreal. And as Joseph raised the ancient knife, beginning to chant words in a language older than America itself, Jessica thought of the irony that, in a way, she had finally found what she was seeking, a complete liberation from the pressures and demands of the modern world. The sacrifice was completed at exact noon, when the sun reached its highest point in the sky. Jessica's blood ran through the grooves of the altar to the basin at the base, in the same way that the blood of hundreds of others had done over the centuries. And as her heart stopped beating, something ancient and hungry beneath the lands of New Harmony stirred, satisfied for another year. 2 weeks later, a new advertisement appeared online, offering a detox retreat in traditional rural America for just $250 for an entire week. And somewhere in an American city, someone too stressed, too tired, and too desperate for an escape was already clicking on the link, not realizing they were about to become part of a cycle much older and darker than they could imagine.